Now there you can see the blowout. It's right by the leg of the platform there. That's when she blew out. And at the time, there was fear that it might undermine the leg of the platform tip over, but it didn't. Now here's some of the news. Those clippings out of the paper, the local paper. There's some artist's sketch of what happened, where she blew out down below. It shows a formation down there, and it came up out of the pipe and through fissures and stuff alongside of the platform. This is some of the local news media. Here's an evening view of the platform. It says it's sundown. If you know to watch the sun, you can practically see it. It's taken in frames, and you can see the sun disappearing there. Now this is platform A. We had one of our barges up there getting ready to pump the mud. Now here's some of the oil in the distance there, as you can see. This was before the leak was stopped. It was floating offshore. And that barge in the distance was an exploration barge. Now here's our barge. We brought up two big cement pumping trucks from Ventura, and we was going to offload, which I'll show in a minute. We're going to offload onto the platform. Now there you can see the blowout there around the leg of the platform. That was oil and gas blowing up there. There's also a picture of it. Here's a drilling barge they brought in before they shut the well off. They were going to slant drill and try to stop the well. This is a picture of loading a cement pump truck up on platform A just before the well was shut off. They had these pumps up there to help pump the heavy mud. The way to kill these wells like this is to pump heavy mud, which runs around, at this particular job, it run around 130 pounds to the square foot, and they pump it down under tremendous pressure and overrides the pressure in the well, and that way they stop it from blowing out. Here's some more of the oil. This was before the blow was stopped. Here's what they call a baker tank. We had 22 of those on our barges. We had 5,000 tons of mud in a 130-pound mud in preparing to kill the well. Here's another tug and barge they brought up from Los Angeles Harbor with a load of mud. They had everything available, all mud, because they needed as much as possible. Now this is our barge with the 4,000 tons of mud on board. tied up to platform B, and we're pumping through a pipeline to platform A because it was too dangerous to get all that equipment around platform A with a gas leak as it was. So they pumped it through a pipeline from platform B, which is that one right there, on down to platform A, and then down into the well. It took them about 2 hours, 3 hours, I guess, to pump all that mud. Now they were through with the barge and were getting ready to move out of there. The well's been killed. But what happened a few days later, the pressure built up and it came up through some fissures about 100 to 200 feet east of platform A. But the main blowout around the leg was stopped completely. Now here's some local oil there that's out around the platforms. At times it was so thick that when the boat would run through it, it'd gurgle like syrup in certain areas. This is a group of protesters that was waiting for Nixon when he landed. Now this is tons and tons of straw it was rice straw that was brought from up in Northern California down to spread on the oil, and they stored it here by the plunge there on the Cabrillo Boulevard. And it was spread, as you'll see later in the pictures, on the oil, and then scoop the straw back up. Now this is the harbor, the boat harbor in Santa Barbara during the heavy pollution there. You can see it on the sides of the boats and the rocks. And this is taken around the Navy Pier. And here's some of the personnel that was cleaning it up with a straw, throwing straw on it, and then scooping the straw up. Now here's some of the straw that, this was on the West Beach, west of the yacht club, where they had thrown it on the oil and picked it up, and they scooped it up there waiting for the trucks to pick it up and haul it. And in the distance you see this big machine towed by a tractor. They have a blower on there, blows the ground up straw onto the oil that's on the beach, and they come by and rake it up later. Now this is the same area taken a few weeks later after the oil was cleaned up, taken from the same spot. Now this is some more of the pictures taken inside the harbor. This is during the heavy pollution there of the oil. Now this is the yacht club taken during the heavy pollution of the beach there. That black you see is all oil. Some kelp mixed in with it. Now that's the same area after they cleaned it. Now here's one of the offshore boats. Has one of those spray and chop hay up and blow it on the oil offshore there, just outside the harbor. It was the same kind of hay blowing instrument as they have on that tractor and truck they were towing on the beach. And then the oil sticks to the straw and then floats ashore and they scoop it up. This is some of the yachts that are protesting. This was GU. They had a table set up on the breakwater, and they were signing up people in protest. Now this was during this spill they tried many things to clean up the oil. This was some kind of a steam pressure deal that was trying to clean off the rocks, but I don't think, personally I don't think it worked very good. This was taken over in the area around the Underseas Gardens. There was oil pollution in there. This was between Undersea Gardens and Stearns Wharf. Now here's a device that was tried. That center hole there they had a big vacuum truck, which you see in a minute up on a wharf, was trying to suck up the oil, but it wasn't very successful. Here's some more of the cleaning crew that was working in the harbor. At one time, counting the harbor and the beaches, they had around 1,500 men working. This is an oil boom. They call it an oil boom, but they kind of corral the oil from spreading while they can get some straw in it and collect it and pick it up. This was an office, a portable office they set up for claims for boat owners and people there. Here they are loading the straw on the trucks, hauling it away. I think most of it was hauled up around Santa Paula or someplace in that area. This was a device that was flew in from the East Coast, and they were trying it out, experiment, but it didn't work. It was like a lot of the rest of them. It wasn't very successful. It had a big sponge that revolved right in the center there, and it was supposed to mop up the oil and wring it out, but it was a flop. This is platform A again. This was taken after the blowout, after they were out trying to stop the fissure. This is the platform. This is the way they load the personnel off and on the platforms in rough weather. When it's too rough to go alongside the platform with a personnel boat, they load them on this net. They hold on to that 5 or 6 at a time and put them aboard with a crane. They change crews every 12 hours on the platform. This is some more of the local clippings out of the local paper, news media. This was a porpoise that washed ashore up around Hope Ranch, somewhere in the area there, but they tried to say the oil killed it, but after an autopsy it wasn't. And this is shows where the area the oil spill was and how it spread up and down the coast. This was some Washington, D.C. officials that came out here to investigate. That's some more of the Washington. This was the area between the wharf and the breakwater after the cleanup. This is the same area before the cleanup. Now this picture here was taken, this was in the entrance to the harbor, taken from the wharf out of the area of Moby Dick's restaurant. It was when the heavy concentration of oil came in the harbor. A lot of this has straw mixed up in with the oil. It eventually washed on the beach and was picked up. This was a Navy tanker. As soon as I heard about the spill, the Navy sent it up. For what purpose, I don't know. It was never used. This was taken from the wharf in towards the motels and over in the area of this bathhouse and the This pictures were taken up around the Henry's Beach, right by the parking lot there at Henry's Beach. There's quite a considerable amount of oil washed ashore there. This was taken by the harbor there in front of the yacht club. Now this was up at Henry's Beach, and they had sandblasters up there, which I was showing a minute, sandblasting the oil off all these rocks. There you can see the sandblaster equipment. This is some of the rock here before they sandblasted. Here's one of the local boats here on the side. There is what they call a skimmer. They were using that. It worked fairly well. I'd say 50%. There's the pumps and stuff. They'd skim the oil into that device on the side, and the pumps would suck it out of there and put it in tanks on boat, and they'd bring it in and unload it at the wharf there on the big trucks. Now, after the big spill came in the harbor, they had a boom across there to keep it out, but there was a very light film oil around the harbor, so they laid a pipe on the bottom of the entrance, and they had a stream of air going through it. They had a big air compressor on each end, and it made a curtain of all across there of air bubbles, and that helped. As long as the oil wasn't too thick, that prevented it from coming on in the harbor. If there was strong wind or a large amount of oil, well, it wouldn't have been successful. But just average day, it worked. Here's the boom that they had before when the big spill came in Santa Barbara. They had a boom like this across the entrance, but the thing broke, and it built up. The oil built up so heavy behind it, it broke and let the oil into the harbor. There. These are the supply boats that supply the different platforms. This was beginning of the picketing of the wharf and the different rallies they had to get oil out. That car you see is a city official car running through the picket line. These are local pickets there, picketing the wharf for supplying equipment for the offshore oil. Now this is a sketch that was in the local paper, the pipelines that run offshore from the shore out to these platforms. Between the Gaviota, them right there up in the Gaviota area. Most of those are underwater wells, there's no platforms, just a wellhead, natural gas wells. Them right there out to platform A and the different other platforms. This is the area, a beach between the wharf and the breakwater that was cleaned up after. Here's the harbor, the same area you saw before, after it was cleaned up. This is some more supply boats taking supplies out to the offshore platforms. This is some activity on the wharf there where they're loading the supplies. This was a GU rally at the foot of the wharf there, protesting the use of the wharf and the offshore platforms. Right after this picture was taken is when they laid down in front of the trucks that was hauling some supplies out the wharf. Now, after the big blowout, it broke loose through some fissures and was leaking quite a considerable amount of oil about 100, 200 feet away from the platform. So they built these, what you see right here, we call them tents, recovery tents. They're actually like a big trampoline, and they're made out of 20-inch casing pipe diameter, and they're about, that one right there is 125 by 125 feet in diameter. And we towed them out to the location, and they submerged them, flooded the tanks right over the top of the big fissures, and there was a pipe right where that person is there in the center. It comes up, a hose connects on there, and the oil flowed up to the storage tanks on the platform. Now this is being towed, was launched in Wainema, and it was towed to Platform A. They had about 6 tents, and there were different sizes. This one was the biggest one. There we are getting ready to submerge it. We're over the top of the leak. There you see the pipe hose running over to the platform. This was a helicopter was out taking pictures of tents. These tents were very successful. The fabric over the top was a heavy nylon covering with covered with a plastic coating. Now there's Platform A where the pipe or the leak was at. There's a smaller tent getting ready to launch and put over the side. Where there was a small leaks on the bottom, they'd make a smaller sized tent and put over it. Now that was a pipeline coming up from the tent going to the platform. Later that was done away with and put underwater so there was no obstruction on top. This is one of the tents on board the barge. That's one of the tents, a vertical picture of it. Now this is a diving bell going down to locate a spot where to put the tent. So they won't waste, they'll be sure they get it right in the right spot. This is gas bubbles you can see coming up from the leaks on the bottom. This was another tent being towed up, put down on location. The divers would go down and place the tents after we got them so they would be sure they're over the leaks. That was some experimental oil boom some company brought out to see and anchored it out there to see if how it would stand up to the weather. Now, after we got 6 of these tents down on the bottom, they all manifold into this one buoy here. From this buoy that you see, there's a hose went to the platform. It's a gas. There's one of the tents there. That the reason for those stripes on there was so that the diver could orient himself when he was down on the bottom and kind of get an idea, because it's hard for him down there, especially when the water's not too clear, and to find out just where they're at. There we're getting ready to submerge the tent. What causes the oil to come up through that center pipe is the gas pressure, plus the oil has a tendency to float, and it goes right up to the highest point of the tent, and then right at that highest point is where the hose hooks on. Now here's the hose that's hooked on. We just hooked it on and getting ready to hook it up to the thing, but it's starting to produce. You watch it there, you can see there's some oil. And then you also see, sometimes mostly, a lot of water come with it, but these were hooked up to the main line and went over to the platform. A few minutes after this picture was taken, it was hooked up. And out of the 6 tents, at first they were producing as high as 100 barrels a day. See, right now it's mostly water there. Then pretty soon you'll see it builds up and there'll be a big gush of oil and gas. There she comes. Now here I had to animate these tents on the bottom so people could get an idea. Striped, it was the tents placed over it, and then we put a manifold, which that white pipe is a big 10-inch pipe floating under the surface. Had air chambers on it so it would float, and these tents each went into that manifold and from there up the platform. Now you can see right that V, that's the way the big fissure, that after the big blowout, it left a big crater down by the leg of the platform. Now here's a sketch I've kind of drew of the tents and how they work. That's what the buoy, that the subsurface buoy, that holds the pipeline, I mean the hose upright. Now you can see any of the gas oil coming up inside of that tent flows right on up the pipeline. The gas pressure pushes it on up. That's the way the tent looks on the bottom, kind of like a small tent there. This was 6 or 8 months, well, the following summer after the blowout. This is the beach west of the yacht club on the west side there. This was another one of the tents they were getting ready to install there over some of the fissures. They had different problems with the things. Sometimes they'd rip on them and have to pull up, renew the material. The material on the 100-foot tents are around $12,000, $14,000. There's a diver getting ready to go over and look for a good spot on the bottom before they put the tent down. That's the personnel boats that run back and forth to the platforms. The water depth in this area was about 180 feet. There's a smaller tent that was built. This one was about 25 by 25 feet. This is towing a tent up to the platforms. Here about a year ago, they were working on designing a oil skimmer, skimming a recovery boom in case they had another spill, that it could be used to recover the oil before it hit the beaches. And this one worked very successful. It's being launched now off the barge. They had 2 tracks on it. It consists of a 190-foot wing on each end of it, and a boat's tows from each wing, and then they had a skimmer, a small barge behind it where the oil collected, and then there was another boat with big pumps on it that trailed behind this small barge that sucked the oil out of the barge into their tanks. Now there we are, just experimenting. We just have one of the legs there. We spent 2 weeks trying it out before we ever section at a time, so we got it perfected. Now there we are under operation there. There's a boat on each one of those legs there towing it. The oil goes down through the center. There you can see where the personnel are. That's what they call the skimmer. It's a small barge. These pictures were taken up around Goleta. We was experimenting in the natural seeps up there. In 14 hours of continuous operation, we only worked about 2 hours a day up there. In 14 hours continuous operation, we got 100 barrels of oil. This was the launching ramp on the back of the barge where we launched. Now we're getting ready to pull it aboard again. Each leg one had its own track. Now this is a skimmer, a little small barge where the oil collected and it was sucked out of this into the larger boat. Out of that boat right there had big pumps on it that would suck the oil out of the skimmer into those tanks. There's some of the pumps that were used. There it is in operation. After this oil boom was tried up off Coal Oil Point, it was smooth weather up there, so they want to know how to operate in rough water. So we took it over to the islands, Santa Rosa Island. We tried it over there, but we didn't get enough smooth weather. Here's the helicopter coming over and taking pictures of it and viewing it. Now over there we didn't have any oil to try on like we had up the natural seeps, so they dumped some a lot of popcorn and some other material, and we went through and scooped up 90% of it. This is a big collapsible container the Navy had up here experimenting with using it for pumping oil into after it was recovered, but it wasn't much of a success. Now this is our barge after we had the boom all on board and everything and ready to get underway with it.